Women make like 74 cents for every dollar a man makes.
Right. I think 74 to 77. So why? Why? There's my question. Why is that allowable? And I'm not being snarky. I'm actually saying, how can we continue with the same education, the same institution, with the same or better grades to have pay be 75, let's call it 75 cents on the dollar. I get 4 quarters, you get 3. How does that continue? And this is a legitimate question. How does that continue in 220? 220 is my environmental social class. I mean, this is an opinion piece, but you can cross-reference it with what we know about power and structure and institutionalized and what do you think? I mean, I can't figure out how that would possibly be. 51% of the population identifies as gender female or around there, or at least we've assigned that. So that seems like an awful lot of people that would resist that this wouldn't be possible. Like, what do you think? How can that continue?
There's a lot of people who don't believe that that's true. I've encountered a lot of people who say it's not that they get paid less, it's that they're more likely to do work that pays less, like being a teacher or things like that. The numbers show that it's not based on the job, it's based on like in the same job, women make less than men. But people are so resistant to that idea that I think there's not enough forward momentum with actually doing something to address it.
Right. And that matters that those people identify as the gender male. It matters that those people in power structures identify as dominant race, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. Those people have people that they go home to that are mothers and daughters and wives and grandmothers. Again, I really try to take away the snarkiness and try and understand how institutionally unequal pay knowledgeably could continue. And so we have to put this in a reference, okay? This has been voted for time and time and time again in Congress and has been not voted for. And I believe recently, somehow, there was a vote to equalize pay that was maybe agreed upon in some way for one of the first times. I just don't know this, but then has not been acted upon. So I think it is a lot like affirmative action, right? Equal pay seems like somehow you're going to be taking from people with privilege or power. And so therefore, we just don't see the momentum, the sociological momentum gained that needs to change that. Again, that seems interesting or odd to me. We're in a time of heightened power concerning the female gender, Me Too era, all sorts of things. More and more women during the midterm elections getting elected to positions of power. One would think that this would have been a foregone conclusion a long time ago, but maybe we're at that now. Somebody said 84 cents for every dollar a man makes. We don't even have to do with maternity leave. I don't think so. And we don't have a lot of maternity leave to look at, except for people are gone for certain amounts of time. As far as pay, we know that we just voted on that here in Colorado. So that is not something that this country recognizes like so many other countries recognize, to be sure. Yeah. Good. Okay. What else? So we've got pay, we've got job status, we've got anything else that are sort of, all right, we can move on. So we all agree there's some pretty massive inequalities and we're having trouble having an institution move them. But again, it seems to me like issues that are presented in the government that are so anti-female or anti-gender, people who identify the gender female or being a woman, just doesn't seem like that could survive this long, with those very same people who identify as the gender male having to go home to families full of females or women that they have to represent or somehow interact with. So doesn't make much sense, but here we are, and we're all in agreement that that's the case. All right, so let's go down here, and I don't think that this is meant to be mean-spirited by any stretch of the imagination, but these lists are always interesting. And of course, with talking about gender, a lot of this is stereotype business, right? A lot of the reason that discrimination carries on is because of stereotypes. A lot of the reason that gender discrimination carries on is because of that. So if you identify as the gender male, you can take a deep breath. There's only 28 of these. Normally I list about 150 in class, and by the time we get to 100, it's like, you can tell the guys in the room are like a boxer up on the ropes, just like, But we have 3 lists today, so you'll all get yours, I'm sure. Now, I just say that in play. Let me read these. Okay. Describe the male gender in one word. I suppose I could do a screen share with this, right? Let me roll through with this. I'll do screen share. We can all read these together. Okay. Can you see the top hat? You able to see that? All right. Privileged, masculine, assertive, strong, misunderstood, unrealistic standards, misjudged. Oh, things aren't going as bad as they usually go for us, I would say. Power, dad, complicated, dominant. Okay, sorry. Confident, arrogant, fragile. That's right, I went there. Undefined, simple, stereotyped, timid, entitled, head of house, testosterone, focus-driven. Okay, all right. Usually penis makes it to our list, or thinks with penis. Honestly, like normally, this is a rowdy list. So I'm just gonna say that people were a little bit more mindful than they are usually about how they feel about the gender male in the morning. honestly, the live class piece is fairly brutal. Okay, good. So here's our list. We've got it. Okay, let's look. Describe the female gender in one word. Strong, powerful, united, underestimated, emotional, complicated, sexualized, mom, capable, estrogen. I wonder if it was the same person that answered testosterone, estrogen. Like a biology major or a physiology major. Underrepresented, complex, undefined, emerging, ooh, I like that, stereotype, empathetic, sensitive, considerate, undermined, compassionate, used, Thanos because we're powerful. Wow. Now you've got me thinking, like, if Thanos was going to snap based on gender inequality and Thanos was a woman, would any of us stand a chance? Probably not. Hey, you know how I'm going to fix war, famine, and idiocy all at once? See you later, guys. All right, anyway. Used. Thanos because we're powerful. Underdogs. All right. Okay, awesome. These are good lists. They're shorter. They're good lists. All right. Describe transgender in a word or 2. Brave, misunderstood, human beings. When someone identifies as the sex opposite their biological sex. New, a choice. Oppressed, different identity than sex. Valid and misinterpreted. Expressive, beautifully progressive. Parent, differing gender expressions. Change, stereotyped, not real in quotation marks. Freeing, courageous, not understood, different. People who identify with a different gender than their biological gender, gender identity, complex, misunderstood. Okay, all right, wow. All right, I'm absorbing these lists. Let me absorb for a moment here. All right, I have absorbed. All right, have you run these through your sociological filter? That's what I'm training you to do. This is not a class where I'm not training you to apply this in real life. So if you've run it through your supercomputer of sociological information, thoughts about these lists? Yeah, thoughts about these lists. I'll just leave it there.
I would say that they were fairly tame, almost considerate. I would say, measured. Or measured. Yeah, I would. Maybe 2020 has just got us all just wanting some like normalness in our lives. I don't know, but I thought they were fairly tame.
Yeah. Yep. And I know that I'm setting you up saying that they're normally not, but they're normally not. I mean, these lists get 150 people with tears in their eyes because of the brutality. Because people are like, and I don't mean brutal in mean ways, but just like, here you go. Here's a whole list of grievances and like stereotypes and reality. This is reality, right? You know, this does bear some reality. I do think, as I'm looking at male, assertive, masculine, misunderstood, misunderstood almost never makes our list. Good gravy, somebody's so compassionate about men in this thing. And there are about 100 different ways to say head of house or testosterone that didn't make the list either. So I do really feel like, yeah, this is the most thoughtful list, particularly, I don't know, now probably across the board. Although, right, as you would expect, our list between men and women as far as that thoughtfulness or that lovey vibe is way different, right? So make some observations, gender-based observations here.
Is my mic on?
Yeah, a little low.
Okay, it wasn't working yesterday. Just wanted to make sure. But one of the things that I noticed throughout the list is we had to use one word to describe male, female, trans, all that stuff. But when you were going down the list, it kind of made me sad to realize how many, like, I guess some negative words there were in there, or like I think for female, I think one of them was like sexualized or something like that. And then I can't remember the other one. I think it was like oppressed or something, but
undermined.
Yeah. But it just made me sad that the first word that kind of like came to mind for female, or some of the ones that came up for male, like that was the first word they thought of, or that's the word that they wanted to use.
Yeah, and for women, strong was number 1 with 4, powerful with 3, united. So some of the same top ones for each gender. But then there's, when you start to look at, I had to take a Latin class because I was really good at taking, English tests when I was in grade school. So I got offered a free Latin class, which, wow, I was in it with a bunch of really smart people from, Rockford, and I went and I did this class. But now I have a working knowledge of Latin, which gives you a better working knowledge of English, right? So seeing things like underestimated, underrepresented, undefined, underdogs, right? There's a lot of submissive or under, right, type of tones to those words themselves if we break the words down. Like I said, language is the key to all cultures. So the words that we use in just sort of daily mean a lot. That's one of the reasons that we do these things. Good. Other observations about these lists?
On the list for the female gender, I noticed that emotional was on there, and it wasn't on the list for the male gender. And I just find that so funny because I know that, the stereotype is women are more emotional, but like literally we're all emotional. We all have emotions. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty reflective of the way that we see the difference in genders.
Yeah, definitely. And usually the word, and we usually get on the female list over emotional and emotional. We get various versions of it where we don't really get that on the male list, right? We did get dad, but we didn't get like compassionate, loving, great father. You know what I mean? Like the stuff on the male list, though we don't have as many answers in this class, is still privileged, strong, unrealistic standards, power, complicated, dominant, arrogant, simple. Simp? Am I supposed to say simp nowadays? I can't remember. I hear the boys saying that, but I'm not sure if I usually misinterpret that. But they told me simp wasn't a bad thing, but I think they're lying to me. All right. So other observations. How about the trans list? What are some observations from that? I mean, we've got things from valid and misrepresented to not real in quotes to courageous to a choice. So it's again, that's this list is the list that is, generally speaking, in the past, the most tiptoey in ways. Or maybe the most misunderstood, perhaps, in ways. And I wish that we could have class in real time again, but I've lost the contact information. There was some fantastic human beings, some individuals, transgender individuals that would come up from Denver and talk to my classes for several years in a row. And it was really, really, really interesting because one of the guys was a Vietnam sniper. And he would tell a story about how he's sitting in a tree, picking people off, worried about coming home, and thinking the entire time about wanting to wear and being more comfortable in women's clothes. You know, we've got a goal. And so we have these really masculine trans folks that are very misunderstood. One of the guys, Dan, was an Olympic gold medal skier, invited his girlfriend up to their cabin in Colorado, up in Aspen. They're there. She goes to the bedroom to change. She comes out of the bedroom with women's underwear. And he's like, first of all, I know what you're thinking, which is what? Go ahead. Anybody?
He cheated.
Right. And then he's like, so what you think is bad, but what I'm going to tell you is going to be more shocking. Those are mine. Right. And I feel more comfortable with that. But we didn't have that opportunity, and I didn't have that context. But I think it's really important, just like race and intergroup contact, if we know less about transgender folks, we need to be able to have contact with and understanding with and just more socialization, I think, with an understanding. So anyway, wasn't able to provide that this semester because I think that that was a valuable tool in the past, but something to consider. This list, more incomplete. And perhaps I think that reflects that changing gender spectrum and how dominant culture deals with it, right? At their own pace. So other observations from these lists, anything sort of overall with the three lists, get the idea? Do gender stereotypes still carry sociological momentum and weight of past? All right, good, we're good. All right, I think that's pretty obvious to us. And whether that's me raising the boys and they were born in 2005, or whether that's James with a brand new baby like on his lap during class sometimes, or whether that's us in our 30s or us at 18. So yep, definitely society dealing with a lot of that momentum. I would like to spend some more time with this chapter as I look on gender stratification and inequality. But I think I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna leave this first now and move on, because the chapter on the environment comes so much more out of this textbook that I wanna get to that. Is that acceptable with everybody here? I'm sorry that we're dealing with like some time constraints. Does anybody want to wrap up this chapter on gender? Now, that being said, I do lecture over these slides, and it is embedded in the class. So if you want to watch my formal lecture on it, which is, like I said, sort of been in the background all semester long as well, please do. That's under the modules. Any last questions about this chapter or things you want to touch on? No? All right. So let me switch over here. And I'm opening up a file. I wasn't sure. I know that we could go farther with this, like I said, but let's get over here to, let's switch gears with the environment. I did ask a bunch of questions this morning. We're not going to look at those questions until next week. That's fine, but I kind of want to start in with this chapter for everybody. We will be, obviously, as usual, talking about discussing all this in real time. Okay, so let me screen share. All right. Can everybody see that? Okay, great. How are the chickens? Yeah. All right. It's like no other class gets the morning chicken report but you. So I hope that you find that a valuable addition to your education and not a distraction. Okay, environment and society. Scrolling through this cow. Would you be willing to eat less meat? We'll get to these questions in a bit. I will say that you're in some dangerous territory if you're wrapping your turkey in bacon and deep frying it. I didn't say not tasty territory, just dangerous territory, depending. Are humans partially responsible for climate change or global warming? we will get back to that as well. I just want to say, look at that little polar bear on that piece of melting ice. I just want to say that you don't have to worry about that polar bear. He died a long time ago, shortly after this picture was taken, because he had to swim a really long way because of melting ice caps and a lack of food. Sorry, I know it's early in the morning. I'm not trying to depress you, but the reality is that. All right. Oh, somebody just made a comment. I enjoy the morning chicken report. Oh, good. All right. Well, you're going to get it, even if it's tragic. All right. So environmental sociology. What we're talking about with environmental sociology here is, as we switch gears from gender, is really the study of community in the largest sense, okay? And although, I mean, the environment is listed as one of people's top few concerns, and of course, rightfully so, right? This is our planet. This is the one planet we have that sustains us. If they ever say something like, well, we found another planet that seems perfectly habitable, it always makes me cringe, because I think a few more Big Mac wrappers might be thrown out of windows someplace because, you know, well, we've got another Earth. Let me assure you, first of all, this is the largest community we have on Earth, and there is no other Earth. We have physically as much planet as possible. If there is the possibility someday to travel to another planet that we don't trash as much, or that is like, you know, not under so much duress, I guarantee everybody in this class will be dead before that happens. Sorry. I'm a huge Star Wars fan too, and I'd like to be able to fly off this planet and to investigate the universe, but that's not going to happen. So when we talk about environmental sociology, we're talking about this emphasis on understanding the origins of and proposing solutions to social and biophysical conflicts. I mean, we've got to look at where our natural world and our human communities intersect. I mean, besides the depths of the ocean, there's almost no place on this planet where humans and nature don't intersect in some way. So maybe, like I said, yeah, the depths of the ocean, there are a few probably tribes of people living, indigenous folks on the planet that haven't been discovered, but very, 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 very few. So because we're going to identify a lot of the problems that are going on in our natural world, if we were in a classroom, if we had a whiteboard or a chalkboard or whatever, we could start to make a list of the problems, and it would wrap around the room about 20 times, right? So because that's the case, I always, when I look at anything really in sociology, but particularly in relationship to the environment, I want us to go about this in a way that's solution-based, okay? We know that as human beings, if we make a big list of the problems and it seems like it's too much for us, right? Like it seems like we couldn't stop eating meat and slow stress the environment, right? We couldn't do something for the environment, then people simply won't. If we think that the problem is too big, then people generally fail to act. So I want solution-based thinking. And back here, I've got the questions that we consider at the beginning of every chapter. What are the problems that we're experiencing globally in regards to the environment? That list is big and we will talk about it. Who are those issues impacting? We know that issues of the environment impact some more than others, and they are the same usual suspects that we talk about time and time again, right? People in lower income communities, people of color, the externalities of climate change, like what comes downstream, not only metaphorically, but actually what comes downstream is different based on environmental justice and based on the things that we've been looking at all semester long. I think one of the big questions is, what can we do to create a more sustainable approach to living? CSU was just recognized again this fall. And I think we had dropped to 2 on the list, or 3, to a place in California, another institution, but we are now the #1 most sustainable university in the United States. Now, when a lot of people throw around the word sustainable, it might be sort of quick or for a brand or a marketing purpose. But the college has and colleges that are working towards this have a really intense rubric. So there are a lot of areas of intensity and practice and behavior and models that they have to put in, changes that they have to make. And CSU has been on top of that for a long time. I think that they deserve some credit. And then, what is our relationship to our natural world? I mean, when we're looking at the food project, it's like, what's our relationship with food? You know, anything in sociology, we got to ask that. So what's our relationship to our natural world, right? what is that? How did you get socialized to like respect or participate in or not your natural world? Did your parents go camping all the time? Did you do a garden? Did you never go camp? Like, was hiking a big thing? Did you live in a state geographically where that wasn't possible? What do you think? What's your relationship with your natural world? Like growing up in your family, was there an emphasis on sustainability? Was there an emphasis on the environment? Was it connected to food or recreation or vacations? I'm gonna put this up to you. What do you think? What's your personal relationship with your natural world, our natural world?
For me, it was I grew up in California, spent a lot of time like off-roading, riding dirt bikes in the Mojave Desert. When I was really young, there used to be so much just open desert, wide open. Nobody owned anything in a lot of those areas that we went to. Just recently, I went back. It's been like 6 or 7 years since I drove through that area, and it's all gone. Like all the racetracks, all the open trails, like everything, it's gone. Like it's suburbs, shopping malls.
Right.
It's like it's crazy. It's really disheartening to see all that area just built up and developed like that. So, and that's not the first time I've noticed it. I mean, growing up, you see it kind of just disappear. So, I mean, that's just what I've seen throughout my life.
Yeah, I was noticing that our band about 11 or 12 years ago took some pictures down off of Harmony, and it's towards the highway, Ziegler. And when we did that 11 or 12 years ago, this is just in town here, it was a gravel road. And I went there less than a year ago. For something, I had to drive that way. And I was like, there was this farm that we took these pictures at, and everything around that area, and most of that had been leveled, but it has trees, it has neighborhoods, it has schools. It's like, it wasn't even close 10 years ago. And now it looks like Sim City, like literally faster than I ever could have imagined. And this is just here in town. Now, I've been in Colorado and Fort Collins 20 years now this year, and there didn't used to be much past Harmony, and it was way before Timberline. Austin's, when I got in town 20 years ago, there was nothing on Harmony much past that. I don't even know if that's still there, but so yeah, quite a bit of that. And we can see that particularly in our natural areas as well, not just in building in town, but yeah, good. What is your relationship with your natural world? Who else?
So when I was growing up, I never really had a connection to the natural world. I don't know, I wasn't taught to really make the connection between the earth and everything and all the resources and food and all of that. And it wasn't until my 20s when I lived up in the mountains, like really remote, that I really started to understand that connection and sort of build it. But it took that for me to really understand that, like, oh, wow, I am connected to the earth. It was interesting.
All right, so not really early on, maybe necessarily. I've been out here in Colorado 20 years. We were coming out here in college because my grandparents are from Evergreen. So we'd go to Red Rocks shows or drive out, Julie and I would, to see some concerts, stay in their yard because their yard is only 8 miles down the back end of the mountain, so we could camp for free. But my parents were teachers, so we didn't go to like Disney World ever. That would be crazy money. But we did go out to my mom's mom every year, her mom, which that was grandma and grandpa up in Evergreen. So every year when I was little, we would come out to Colorado. And I got a dose of like something so different from Illinois that I fell in love with it subtly in the background ever since I was really little, and then wound up here, no accident. So it was kind of like I got trained to love Colorado from 1,000 miles away, and then wound up here because it just kept calling me. Good. Who else? Whether that was gardening with your mom and dad, or camping trips, or not, or growing up in a big city.
I'd say my relationship is really good, or I think most people in Colorado's relationship is really good, because we have so much mountain and land and all these amazing places here that I feel like people here, or people who hike and go out and experience all this, or like Allie was saying, going up to the mountains, I feel like Colorado people or Colorado natives have, you know, a respect for our land. And I don't know, I just always think about that, especially when I see people on hikes. I feel like everyone is super respectful of where they're walking and the environment around them. So I'd say it's a pretty good relationship.
Yeah. So geographically, some states could maybe be more connected with that if there's more to it. I do feel that Colorado is sort of stands out in that way. Who else? Sort of, whether it's growing up or now, your relationship with the environment.
I think one thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
I think one thing is that talking to a lot of people that are out of state is in Colorado, you definitely learn about the pack in, pack out a lot more than you do in other places that don't have like nature or like the Rocky Mountains in the backyard.
Good. Yeah. Like we don't just enjoy nature in Colorado. We got some rules, right? We got some rules for how to enjoy it. In Illinois, go out to a nature preserve or go on a hike. There was no pack it in, pack it out. Good. Who else was going to say something?
I was just going to say that, like, I grew up in Colorado. I'm not, like, a Colorado native, but I moved here when I was, like, 5 years old. So that's, like, 13 years. And I was always really connected to the nature aspect. Like, anytime I would leave, I'd be really confused. Like, visiting Dallas, it's, like, this concrete jungle. And I've always had mountains, either, like, all around me or, like, on the side, and it really makes a difference. I don't know. I've always felt like that connection with nature for sure.
Okay, so, and I think maybe what you're alluding to too is a bit of, and I think this is fantastic, we don't always get to that discussion, is a spiritual connection, right? Mm-hmm. For some people, their connection with nature is that it's their religion. I remember seeing Ziggy Marley up at the Mishwaka, a great little venue here up the Poudre River, and he said, the river is all the religion I need. Like this, listening to the river, being outdoors. And so I think that, spiritual connection can be our relationship with the outdoors. Absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, good. And I can't think of a bigger contrast really between like Colorado and Dallas. Like that's a really good example for contrast as far as that's concerned. All right, so sociologists, we look at consumption, the economy, technology, development, population, the health of our bodies. All those things are connected, right, and shape our environmental conditions. This morning I saw a headline that said Prince Harry blames Mother Nature for 2020, or I don't know, something like that. But a lot of what's going on with our natural world is a direct response to human being behavior. It's not just a natural disaster. It's a disaster caused by externalities caused by climate change, a lot of which is warming, and we know this, right? So as sociologists then, what impacts can we make? And I guess one of the questions that we have to look at would be, can human beings make a positive impact on the environment? Or are human beings always a negative impact on the environment? I mean, how can we really understand how the economy and technology could relate to our situation with our natural world and then improve that technology to improve our air? I mean, we are again talking about, in a non-bleeding heart type of hippie way, we're talking about we have a finite amount of water. It's an irreplaceable substance. We have to be able to breathe. We have to be able to have the functioning of the planet continue to function for us to be able to have a place to live or conditions with which we can thrive. So we do have this myth that gets in the way of infinite economical growth. A lot of economists would say that our economy stopped growing back in the 70s or 80s. It's just how we measure it, right? So we don't usually measure the externalities, meaning if we sell $1 billion of cigarettes, but our healthcare industry has $250 million of stress on it, people missing work, cancer treatments, you know what I'm saying, then you subtract that. And then you really have a better idea. But that's not how we process economic models in this country. We look at all of that as profit, and then that kind of drives this myth. But that myth also drives that thing that we could purchase infinitely, or that we wouldn't need to recycle things or reuse things. So we have to understand that piece that I said, which is no more space. We have as much earth as possible, right? And every time you spend $1 or 50 cents or 10 cents, you are voting with your money, okay? So, I mean, whether you vote to buy a quickie pair of jeans at 20 bucks from Walmart, or whether you vote to buy a pair of $80 jeans from Patagonia, it's a vote, right? And you weigh all sorts of options, but oftentimes people don't necessarily weigh the environmental option. We are more now, and we need to, particularly with our consumption, because our consumption use, and that's one of the things we look at as sociologists, shapes our environment. It shapes our experiences. It shapes the actual functioning of the environment. So that's something we look at as well. Okay. Sociologists look at ideal moral values, risks, social experience, how all of those things influence our decisions towards the environment, right? I mean, are we walking across campus and we throw a wrapper out or a cigarette butt out, or all of these things are morals as we were growing up and the way that we were taught? Does that keep us from doing that and acting differently towards the environment? So what were you taught to value about our natural world when you were growing up, and how does it influence your behavior today? What's a specific thing? Anybody here part of the Clean Plate Club? Does anybody know what the Clean Plate Club is? Raise your hand. Yeah? That would be something, right? Like your parents saying, finish your meal because there's starving people wherever, right? I mean, of course, we know that there's starving people in your very hometown, where mothers are saying that all across, or fathers are saying that all across the United States. But yeah, okay, so that would be an example here. Anybody else? What were you taught to value about our natural world when you were growing up? Did you do an eco week? Did you do, yeah, what specific thing? Can anybody come up with a specific thing?
There was one thing, just growing up camping, the people I always camped with, my parents were always like, when you leave, make the area look like you weren't there, basically. Pick up all your trash, put your fire out, make it look pristine.
Okay, put your fire out, right? A lot of the forest fires that start in our state, and I am gonna go there, are started by people that aren't from Colorado, that don't have that same set of pack it in, pack it out, pick it up, put it out. And we know that that's a point of contention. Also, non-buried power lines, right? Things like that. I watched and kept up with a lot of the firefighter updates, because that stuff interests me. But yeah, good. So put out your fire, clean up your space. What else? Anybody else? Something specific you can think of that sort of influences your behavior today?
I remember learning, it was probably like 3rd or 4th grade, learning that our water source is like, there's not just this abundance of fresh, clean water forevermore, and I freaked out about it, and I started policing everyone in the house and making sure we weren't unnecessarily using water. And I still do that. Like, I'll turn the water off between like soaping and rinsing the dishes and stuff, and I'll like turn it off for other people if they're not doing that. I don't know, it's a habit now.
Good. And that's a generational thing, because when I was a kid, you just turned on the faucet and you brushed your teeth, and you left the water running the entire time. And I remember, being in college and thinking about for the first time, like, oh, I should shut that off. And even feeling like in the background salty about it, right? Like, oh, now I have to do this thing that I didn't have to before. So it's like socialization is a big part of that. That is such a huge part of why you either turn that water on or turn it off, right? So yeah, policing the water. That's good. That's good. Anybody else in here? Anybody gardening? Did anybody, forced against your will to spend time in your parents' garden and then ended up loving it, or?
So I had the opposite of that, Jason. So
I was there too.
Yeah, my parents had a farm my whole life, all pretty much vegetables mainly, but I resented it. I hated everything about it. I was in those fields every summer picking potato or harvesting potatoes or picking corn or picking beans, whatever, but I hated it. And now that I'm older though, I wish I would have paid more attention for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't have any brothers and sisters, and my parents had a big lot. So whether it was yard work or whether it was gardening, I was like, seriously? And if you've ever done corn detasseling, there's one of your worst, hardest jobs ever. If anybody ever has done that, particularly in the Midwest when it's 95 degrees and 90% humidity. Oh my God. Kind of reminds me of that part out of Napoleon Dynamite where they are at the chicken farm and they have to go in there and do all the gross like eggs and stuff. All right, good. So just an important part that we connect this to every other chapter too in regards to socialization, like the situation that we're in right now with our environment, good, bad, ugly, in the middle. I love those movies, by the way, the good, bad, and the ugly, is a result of our socialization and how we were taught, there's a rooster fight going on outside my window. Oh, look at that. Sorry. It's like these two giant objects throwing themselves in the air at each other. It's hard to get it out of your peripheral. But it's a result of our socialization. So we don't just look at it as sociologists because we have to. We want to know, how can we bring about a more ecological society? I mean, we want to do something about it, right? We've got to take the present. We got to take different paradigms into account. How can we make things better? Local, perhaps our most important focus that we can have right now, and the interconnectedness of all things. And I don't mean like, hey, bro, we're all interconnected. Yeah. I mean like really the air that you breathe right here in Fort Collins is the air that comes from Greeley and the CAFOs. The water that we have in our underground aquifers where, millions of pounds of liquid waste from those CAFOs goes and gets into our groundwater, that's some of the water that we're drinking, right? So we are interconnected. The Fukushima disaster that is ongoing as they cannot contain the radiation, and their plan is to dump all that seawater out. And they just said that a month ago. Oh, their plan is they've been doing that for years. They've been like cooling off the reactors with seawater that goes right back into the ocean. That's not just their problem. Those tuna on our coast are now irradiated, and we have problems with that with our food supply as well. So we are interconnected in a very literal sense, and as well as a spiritual sense, but very literally. All right, so we look at all these different intersections with social and environment. So the central role of social inequality. Okay, environmental conflict comes from social inequality. Some people actually can resist the externalities of climate change because they have a house on the hill, and the people that are flooding are down in the valley or across the tracks, right? So environmental justice matters. Making these connections, right, which we're trying to do between like the big paradigms, the micro and the macro paradigms. Same thing here as we're trying to make these connections between local and global. Right? What's happening at the local level? How does that relate? And with the sociological imagination, remember that? We're always connecting that big picture, divorce rates, to the little picture, how relationships work. So the same thing here. We also look at the metaphor, the power of the metaphor of community for understanding these social and ecological dynamics. None of this is going to happen. No positive advances will be made. We won't change the environment in any substantive way without collective action, without that metaphor for community. And I would say, this has been the diciest year for the environment and for the way that we think about the environment, because people are like, oh, people didn't drive for 2 months. And I remember do you remember seeing all those articles coming out? They're like, oh yeah, and it's the least amount of emissions, and we could measure that things have gotten better. That's a blip. That's a blip on the radar. We need to be doing less driving all the time. We need to be looking at all of those things that people backed off doing things, traveling and everything else because of the pandemic. We need to look at that in bigger terms. And then we also have to understand that the pandemic isn't something that's the fault of an individual country. The pandemic is a direct result of climate change, okay? The viruses that can exist when you ratchet the temperature up 0.5 degree, whether that's polio or other things making comebacks, things can exist and then reemerge and emerge based upon a slight temperature adjustment, or based upon massive fires, or these big shifts that we're experiencing. So we have to look at that. And certainly the influence of our political institutions and commitments in our environmental practices. Let me say that we have a historical legacy of being abysmal towards the environment, okay? This isn't just with this administration, this isn't just with the Obama administration. Look, we have been piss poor with involving ourselves with the Kyoto Protocol, with treaties, with any type of global movement. And that's not how it was when I was born. When I was born, it was the Republicans and Richard Nixon that the EPA came out of, and that the Environmental Protection Act and Agency and all this stuff. Like, look, 30, 40 years ago, we used to work together much better, not only within this country, but without. Right now, we're at the end of 4 years of massive setbacks and destructions, opening up to public drilling, you name it. This administration was a particular failure, but that doesn't mean that we've been doing good for a long time. So we have to look at politics. Do you think that the environment is inherently political? I don't. We need this thing to survive. But as human beings, if we're going to politicize it, we have to look at the influence of our political institutions and what kind of commitments do they have and what kind of environmental practices do they have. Look, one thing that I know that we know from running economic models, and I will look at those exact numbers on Tuesday with you. Anytime you invest ahead of time, right? Anytime you put money into it, the Green New Deal, any of that, let's say that costs $2 billion. Let's say it costs $5 billion. Let's say it costs $10 billion. I don't care. You pick the number. $10 billion. No, I'm going to go for $100 billion. The Green New Deal will cost $100 billion. Well, I guarantee you, as we look at statistics on Tuesday, that inaction costs you twice plus that. So you invest now. You invest before the levees break, and then you have to rebuild New Orleans. You either invest a tiny amount, relatively speaking, or after the fact, or while trying to catch up, you spend tens of billions of dollars more. There's not any economic model that we can run that would say that you wouldn't be saving and making money by doing that. You would be. So if you are fiscally conservative, dear fiscal conservatives, you need to support environmental action. The fact that you're not supporting environmental action, if you label yourself as conservative or fiscally conservative, doesn't reflect the reality of economics. Okay? Ooh, Jason's getting intense. I'm just laying it down because that's the truth. And that is how you appeal to people who don't want to talk about or acknowledge problems with the environment or say that they're fiscally conservative. You say by doing this, you're going to save or make billions. All right. And I think that's common ground, and we've got to find ways to appeal to people, right? So why do we have a concern for our ecological current condition or the current condition of the ecological dialogue? Okay. Because we have challenges to sustainability. We have massive challenges to environmental justice. And holy cow, it's the Lorax this morning. That's right. Check out my beard. My question is, besides the frickin' Lorax, do we ever ask this question that I have down here? What are the rights and beauty of nature? I mean, who's going to ask that question? Is there anybody that's going to stand up in the Senate, on the floor of the Senate, and be like, oh, what are the rights and beauty of nature? Or are we waiting for the Lorax to pop up on the Senate floor and be like, you're all doing the wrong thing? Like, no. In reality, we have to start asking the question, what are the rights of nature? What are the rights and beauty of nature, and how do we preserve that? And again, not because of some hippy-dippy scam, but because food is good. Access to food is good. Pollination is essential and critical. Clean air is essential. We are not red or blue states when states are burning down, right? You need to take care of that business. So we have a lot of concerns and challenges in the short run, which is, why we look at that. Okay. Now this is a really, really important question. And I think, let me see what time it is. We're going to get to this. I think we'll get to this question next time. But I want you to think about it. If you have Top Hat, I need you to answer it. Why do you think, I'm asking you ahead of time, why do you think that this question, as vague as it is, on purpose, Jason Downing, how can you do this to us? Fixing in quotes. Why is this such an important question? Before we answer it, you tell me. And this is the basis of all the sociology we've been talking about all semester long.
I think that when you start entertaining the idea of something as being hopeless, a lot of options and opportunities close the door. So I think your attitude and perception is everything with this situation.
Okay, so ding, 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 ding. You're our grand prize winner. Oh, wait, I guess if you get a grand prize winning thing, it should be like, ding, 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 hey. Sorry, you're our grand prize winner. Yeah, look, let's be real. We're human beings. If when we look at this data on Tuesday, 95% of people say impossible, then this is going to be an uphill battle, the likes of which we might not be prepared for. If we get half the class or more saying maybe and definitely, oh, I'm into it, right? We don't know if we can fix what the hell it is or everything, but as human beings, if we feel like we can accomplish something, then we will at least try. And generally speaking, if we feel like things are so far gone that we can't, then we usually don't, right? And I could just say this with student grades. I have seen people bail on a class when they can definitely pull that ship out of the tailspin, do it, you can do it. And they're just like, nah, right? Because they just figure it's not worth it at a certain point. The same goes true for our environment, you know? And we have a lot of these, right, of challenges that are facing us. So we'll look at this next time, but this is a big deal. Yeah, I think that's not a bad place to stop. Any questions or concerns or chiming in on this piece? Do you feel like fixing the environment is why that's an important piece, or where you think we're at right now kind of with this environmental piece? How do you feel about your natural world, about our chances to help things, about just kind of a general question? Are you feeling optimistic? Are you not? Is it too early to feel one way or another? Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just going to say that I wish that we had a better culture of like appreciating the environment, and then I feel like it would definitely be possible. But with the current political climate, like they've politicalized like the environment, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't make me very optimistic because everybody has to be on board with the change that's required.
Good. And your influence, Gabby, you could be on board, but you're not the CEO of a Fortune 500 company that pollutes the world. Yeah. I mean, so we need to get certain people on board that have a greater disproportionate impact on the environment. You know, that's kind of what you're alluding to. Like, you can be on board, and I can be, and our whole class can be on board. In my Soc 220 class, we're mostly all on board because we're at school learning about science, and you know, but what kind of power do we have or influence do we have on our natural world, and how can we get that? I think, wasn't it General Mills that just recently stopped growing GMO wheat? I think it was. I think it's the folks that make Cheerios or something. So I'm talking about, like, look this up. Somebody look it up for next time because it's really interesting. I think it's General Mills that committed to like either non-pesticide growing of their wheat or non-GMO growing their wheat or something like that. But think of the tens of millions of acres of farmland that they pay farmers for that to get that product, all of their cereals and their different things like that to market. When people like that get on board, and I believe they have, that's big, right? And that sends a message, and it's influencing. And then we have to watch out for the externalities of that. Walmart sells more organic food than anybody. So on one hand, you're like, yeah, Walmart, that's people voting with their dollars. That being said, they use some of that money to try and undermine organic stringent standards by lobbying. So, right? You know, where's the support come from? How can we find, you know, common ground and victories for the environment with bigger institutions as well? And of course, collective action all semester long. We know it starts on a local level on your campus, which our campus is doing very well. But we're just one, right? Anything else to chime in on here before we call it a day?
Yeah, one more thing, Jason. So I work at REI part-time. Come see me. I'll be at the cashier. But I found out that yesterday that REI does a program where they take all your snack wrappers. So that's probably like my biggest waste is like from bars, eating just bars all the time.
Right.
And I hate having to throw them away all the time. So REI will take all of your little snack wrappers too. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. What do they do with them?
I was told that they make park benches out of them. I'm not. That was like as the guy was walking away from me, he mentioned it. So I have no idea how they turn that into a park bench. But
Right.
yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm going to be bringing all my snack wrappers in pretty soon.
I can't wait till they finally start making hemp toilet paper on a mass scale. Like if we're gonna have through with people being ridiculous and buying all the toilet paper out, we need. That's like one of my big things right now. Hemp is so huge and it's rolling forward. You got to roll it out to everything. What were you gonna say?
I've got bamboo toilet paper.
That's yeah. We have access to that too. Bamboo is actually fantastic. If you've never worn a bamboo shirt, our band printed some bamboo shirts. It's probably like the softest thing ever. Good. Anybody have batteries? I've got a giant box full of batteries and I just keep it. And I know that they're one of the most toxic things in the face of the planet. And I don't trust when I go to Best Buy, if I were to dump a giant box of batteries, that some dude an hour later isn't dumping that box of batteries into a dumpster. I know because I've had students that work at Best Buy. Dry cell battery manufacturing is a biggie. It's a bad one. We'll talk about it because actually there was I'm going to talk about some environmental justice pieces, but it's related to my hometown of Freeport, Illinois, where they had a dry cell battery manufacturing plant right on the river for, about 60 or 70 years and could not remediate that site. So I'm going to talk about that, its toxic legacy, but that's one of the things that I have sitting around. Like you're like, oh, these wrappers. It's like, oh, these batteries. I have the same problem with glass. I recycle my glass, but they want you to clean it all the way. But I could never understand if you're going to melt down glass, why it would matter if there's like peanut butter that gets incinerated, because it eventually all goes back, right? But a lot of that does not get recycled as well. So, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that. Now we've got some places that are incinerating, some countries that are incinerating garbage that are like, it's expelling very few emissions and turning it into energy, right? We've got a lot of options. So there's a lot of things, and a lot of things to talk about here next time. I went to a seminar on ecofeminism last year. Cool, so interesting. Brought the topic of rights of environment itself and how we oppress nature, just like we oppress people. Yeah, and I don't think there's a lot of folks talking about that, how we oppress nature or what would those rights be. So again, I think, there's a lot of work to do on this, but I'm hoping that we'll find people thinking that we can, accomplish this, at least within our small class on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Any more questions? I'll be quiet. Any questions you have as you wrap this up? Monday, open for 24 hours, the remake test. If you haven't taken tests 1, 2, or 3, you can go in and do that. Assignment due over chapters, the gender chapter, the environment chapter on Friday. That's it. And hey, 4,000 pounds of food. So let's keep it going. Oh, I didn't say this. It's not going to make your total sound as impressive, but my online Soch 100 class, somebody dropped $2,600 3 days ago. Yeah, like anonymously. Not anybody from the class. So this number that we're looking at, $4,000, one person rolled in with, I was just scrolling and I was like, what? Like my online classes hardly ever even contribute because they're only like 20 people or something like that. So somebody was inspired enough by this to kick down over 5,000, 5,200, whatever meal. I mean, I can't even, I'm just like, so yeah, let's get on this thing. I think we can get over. I mean, that I know that a lot of people haven't donated to my classes yet. It's like $5. We're gonna, I'm not big into violent metaphors, but we're gonna crush this one. So I'm just thinking of like crushing a can. I'm not being too violent with you, but let's crush it. Anything else? Anything else? Who did that? Somebody's mom or grandma or dad was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard of. Boom. I mean, if I had money, that's what I'd do with it. I'd pick some sociology students at random and make all their grades better. That's just what happened. That's like literally what happened. Somebody just rolled up and it's like 700 students are going to be feeling good about this. Front range students getting extra credit. CU students getting extra credit. CSU students getting extra credit. Don't worry, I don't give the CU students as much extra credit. Oh, burn, Boulder. Sorry. All right, I better go. Feeling feisty this morning. Hey, everybody, be good people and do good things. And I'll see you on our last class period on Tuesday. But I'm here all weekend at the Copacabana. So if you have any questions, reach out, email me. Stay in touch. All right. Talk to you later, folks. Peace, everybody. Thank you. You're welcome.